rich, wide, and true. We've got stories to share and chores to do. Marriage and mayhem under the sky so blue. Welcome to the good life. We'll pull you through.
Welcome back to Rural Roots and Cowboy Boots. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Amy.
Today we're talking about a lesson we both had to learn the hard way.
That we don't have to go to every argument that we're invited to.
Life throws plenty of invitations to fight, fuss, and prove a point, but wisdom is knowing when silence speaks louder than words.
Along the way, we'll talk about dreamers who refuse to live in society's box, Patrick's trip to Washington, my time in Boston and in a rural healthcare meeting, and what it means to sit at the table with people who don't always agree with you.
So pull up a chair. We're glad you're here.
So we are back for
Episode 9.
9. I tell you, the fact that we are continuing this is pretty doggone impressive.
Do you know how many times I've gotten text messages though, because we've been doing one and skipping a week and then doing another one in there in the off the week? Where's your podcast?
I know. It's a lot because we've been kind of busy and
Right.
Things have happened and whatever, and we traveled to Yellowstone and we talked about that, and then I just got back from a girls' trip to Boston, and you are traveling to DC, and life has just been kind of crazy.
How do these professional podcasters do all the travel, do all the stuff, and then still get a podcast out every day?
I don't know.
I ain't figured that out yet.
I don't know. They have a lot of people who work for them. And somebody asked me, this podcast looks very professional. Who does that? And I was like, yeah, because all Amy does is show up and talk.
Supposed to look pretty, but we're still working on that.
Yeah, okay, all right. So I said I went to Boston.
Right.
Okay, and it was a girls' trip, and I had no expectation for Boston.
Never been to Boston,
right?
Right?
Never been to Boston. Was not sure what to expect. We were going for a girls' trip. We were going to see the Yankees and the Red Sox play, and so it was just a fun kind of experience. I wanted to go whale watching.
By the way, the folks that went to the Boston Yankees game, if you saw three ladies, not young ladies, but 3 ladies wearing Yankees gear in the house that Babe built, that was them.
Yeah, well,
Anyhow, but you went whale watching.
I went whale watching. I did all the things, and I kind of fell in love with Boston.
Why is that?
Well, because there are a lot of smart people in Boston. I did not realize that. I didn't realize how many universities and Harvard and Boston College and MIT and I don't know, there was a whole bunch of them that are there that all kind of convene into Boston. And so I did not know that. But then I also got to study some of the history of Boston and kind of go through the founding fathers and the Boston Tea Party and all that. And I did not necessarily appreciate the renegades that made history and made America what it is. And until I stood on a boat and threw tea over through the museum, and I got to throw my own tea into the Boston Harbor, and I kind of got to understand that, society kind of puts people in boxes, and those people that, again, we talk about all the time, the Boston Tea Party, Paul Revere, all of these people that are names to me were actually very, very disruptive. And I feel like we are in kind of that disruptive period in our history of our community and local and global right now. So, yeah.
I mean, they were disruptive. I think that's where the term "screw you" came from.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is in the segment is choosing your battles. Not every fight that it comes up that you get invited to attend, which everybody gets to attend every damn fight now because of social media. But not every fight you have to show up to. But there's some that is worth choosing when you do it. And it's they chose throw up the big middle finger to the king.
Yeah, and again, I a lot of this kind of ties back into some of the other things we talk about. Like, I don't feel like I paid enough attention in history. I don't feel like I paid enough attention in geography. Like,
Right?
I mean, I am college educated, but there's so much I don't know, and I just did not understand until I walked the Freedom Trail
Hmm.
and understood, okay, this is what this looked like. And I kind of get sad because I think about, what's our Freedom Trail look like now?
No, no.
Is it all documented on social media? And if that's the case, then what if we fast forward another 100 or 200 years, like how how are we going to tell the story of how these conversations and ideas are evolving,
But yeah, and then the other side to it though is also these renegades were dreamers,
right?
and in society, from the time we were born, they're working to make you a workforce, make you a follower, and it really stifles the light of a dreamer. And the dreamers that are here today are really the folks who did say screw the system. And a lot of them get chastised and stuff. But I mean, but that's what a lot of them that were in Boston, that's what they were. They were dreamers.
Right. And I think that's hard for me because I am by nature not a dreamer. Like, by nature, I'm going to accept what you tell me at face value. I am going to
The government won.
that the government won
Uh-huh.
as much as, because I don't think it's a political part. I think it's innately part of my personality that I am not a risk taker. I am not a think outside the box, or I am not, it takes me a while to process. But in contrast, I am married to probably one of the biggest dreamers, out of the box thinkers, challenge the system people. And so,
Yeah. Emerson said it though. He
okay,
said, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail."
okay. And I can agree with that. I mean, and as as an educator, as a food producer, as all of those things, like I, one of the conversations that we had, in Boston was about absolutes and things being 100% right or 100% wrong. I do not see that at all. I am very much, let's listen to both sides and learn from both sides and kind of come through that. But that comes back to, you don't have to go to every argument that you're invited to. Um, and it goes back to one of the things that we were talking about, you know, in the sense that, you know, yes, society wants kids to be a workforce, but in the same breath, those kids are sitting there and they are problem solving and thinking in things that we don't understand.
Right. We encourage our kids, don't, if you have a thought, let's see what happens. A lot of times it ends up in being stupid shit, but we still learn from the stupid shit.
I
And so, but I mean, I always, that's what we always did with our kids. Let's just see where this ends up at.
And one of the things that we also say too is, and I think it's kind of the premise for kind of where we're going with this podcast is take every meeting that you're invited to, go to every conversation, not necessarily to give your input.
Right.
Because quite honestly, more times than not, I hope I'm silent and listening and take in instead of putting out. But those conversations and those moments, you never know where there will be the thing that will spark something in a future conversation or in, a future decision that you have to make. And so, take the meeting, even if it's something that you think does not apply to you, you are not interested in, go and invest the time.
Well, and that's what, there's that creates the dreams.
Mhm.
And, and the problem with the dreamers is that it makes people uncomfortable. And maybe that's the point, and is that, that's dreamers are supposed to make us feel,
You just summed up our entire marriage in one sentence. I said you're the dreamer. You said you're supposed to like make me uncomfortable. The past 30 years, you've been doing a great job of that. I am very uncomfortable. So yeah, so speaking of battles, and renegades, I go to Boston.
I go to DC.
You go to DC. Tell me about it.
Oh, yeah. So me and two colleagues with the Cattlemen's Association had a special invite to DC. And because we have been dealing with these two issues, and we brought one of them up, the substantial transformation, try to explain it, but the other one is risk-based inspection. And so we've done enough writing and enough talking, and then we got a special invite to the White House Economic Council
Oh, right, all right.
and the SBA. They're
Oh,
letting us in the doors.
okay, so we've talked about substantial transformation in the past, and that was about the t-shirt
Right.
and the labeling
Labels.
and all of that. Risk-based inspection.
So confusing.
I was gonna say, tell me the
Simple terms is that the law says everything that comes into this country must be inspected by the Food Safety Inspection Service.
okay.
But FSIS says
FSIS is Food Safety Inspection Service.
Yep.
Okay,
But
got it.
they said, well, we don't have to do that because we can create a formula and determine the risk that something will be wrong with product that's coming from certain countries. And so then in that formula, that statistical formula, then the higher up the risk, then we are definitely going to look at that. But then the lower risk countries, well, we ain't worried about them. We just pass them through.
Okay, so why does that matter?
Because of transshipping is the main reason. Is
What is
because
transshipping?
it's where a product starts from one country and ends up into another country.
Okay.
And then ends up here, or might end up in several countries before it ends up here.
Okay.
And so it doesn't start from, or it starts from a high risk country, might end up in a low risk country, but then by changing labels, and we talked about it, substantial transformation, then it enters in, but it originated from a country that's high risk. And so it throws up the red flags of the disease management, disease controls, and food safety concerns and things like that. When we dive into it,
Okay.
the FSIS is only physically looking at 7% of the total meat coming into the United States.
Okay. Again, I'm slow, so you
Right.
gotta like break this down for me. Okay. So we're not talking about the products that are produced in America. We're talking about what is imported in.
Right.
You are telling me that only 7% of those products are physically opened and inspected
Right.
by our ports.
It's amazing.
Why only 7%?
That's the statistical data.
Okay.
That's the statistical. They're only worried about 7% of the total imports countries, or the total countries coming in. It works out to be 7%. And it's not like the beauty of this is it's not guesswork. It is on their website. Like they document this on the USDA's website that this much came into port. We physically inspected this this much. Do the math. It's 7%. But here's the problem.
Okay.
Out of that 7%, it's 27 times more likely to be rejected or condemned than if it was under a U.S. continuous inspection.
Okay. So that 7% separate is 27%
Times.
27
27 times.
more likely to have an issue
Yes.
than a product that is manufactured
In the United States.
in the United States. So risk-based, meaning foreign imported products do come to us with a higher level of concern.
Right.
Okay.
And whether they're a low country, low risk country or a high risk country, it doesn't matter. If you take all the imports, 27 times more likely to be condemned or rejected.
Okay.
If they looked at it.
If they looked at it.
Mm-hmm.
And your rationale, your reason for being in DC, for having this conversation, is not to talk about a problem with another country. It's not specifically. Your rationale is because you were trying to say the American farmer and rancher and meat processor is at a disadvantage from the food producers of other countries, and we've got a higher level of
scrutiny.
Okay.
And cost.
Okay.
With scrutiny comes cost. So it costs more for us to produce from the farmer, the rancher, the processor in the United States. It costs more.
Okay.
Than in foreign countries. So they're already at an advantage there. But then you add in buying power.
Okay.
When you do foreign currency exchange. So for example, if $1 bought this pen.
Okay.
In Brazil, I could actually buy 2 of the same pens.
Okay.
It's buying power. And so the independent is at a disadvantage because we can't play in these games.
Okay.
And so lower cost meat is entering into our ports, being passed through the port, not being looked at, going on the shelf, going in the restaurant, being served, and nobody looked at it.
Okay. And again, like I'm trying to follow through. What are some of the things that they are not looking at?
So first of all, the law says that and this is all law. Like, I mean, it's in 1974, Congress said everything that comes in must be looked at. And what that means is that there is a physical, visual inspection of everything that comes in our port.
Okay.
Number one. Number two, that there will be random samples be pulled.
Okay.
And random tests be pulled. It happens in U.S. plants. It's supposed to happen there. So that's the second thing. But the third thing is also weights are to be verified. FSIS is the only agency that is entitled to check weights on meat products.
Okay, weights as in like.
Is that really a pound of ground beef?
Okay.
And so that's one of the tasks that the FSIS is given is that they have to verify that the weights are correct.
Okay.
And so if we're only checking 7% of loads, who's to say that the invoice that says there's this much weight in the sea container is actually that much weight?
Okay. So I'm following you, and I see how this conversation, substantial transformation and risk-based inspection, matter to the American rancher, cattle producers, and meat processors. How does that matter? Why does that matter to the average American consumer?
Because they're paying U.S. prices, but the company did not buy the product at a U.S. price.
Okay, tell me more.
So when we talked about that buying one pen, right?
Okay.
So that pen is worth a certain amount in the United States. And that's the reason why everybody wants to get their beef in is because we have more disposable income to be buying products with. Okay. But they got it much cheaper in those countries. So they're making more money off of us.
Okay. Now, if I'm understanding the meat industry, and again, I'm going to go at a elevated level, okay? We are talking about the independent
Mhm.
people, but there are how many major companies?
There's four.
Four,
There's four that controls 85% of the beef that comes in.
Okay, are those four companies, do they have an office in the United States?
Yes.
Okay. Do they have an office and or facility in these other countries that
Yes.
are not being inspected?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to me about how all of that plays into where we are today.
So they're inspected in the United States in their facilities that are here in the United States.
Okay.
But they have their own version of inspection in these other countries. So they're able to move inventory back and forth through our borders and be able to get it around into these low risk countries because they'll have offices there. And so they'll move the products around and then drive it through these low risk countries.
Okay.
And so that's what I'm saying. Like, so Tyson,
Okay.
let's quit picking on Brazil or on JBS, just
Okay.
being Brazil. Tyson's a US company,
Okay.
but Tyson has facilities in Vietnam and in Brazil, Argentina, all these other countries. So when it says a Tyson label on the product, that could come from anywhere because they're a multinational. They're one of the big four that are controlling our industry.
Okay.
And so not the Tyson, we think, oh, it's Tyson's, that's US, we're good. No, we're not good. And so what we've done is we've taken the meetings, not picking and choosing, but we have put the information out there and it's developed. I mean, it's developing and where we have Congress looking at it from the standpoint of there needs to be an investigation. We have proven how the American farmer rancher is getting screwed, how it's controlling whether we, our inventory and all of that, right? If right now we are at the lowest inventory levels, right? But nobody's going without any beef because the imports are still coming in. So that doesn't drive us to repopulate our herds. And so they're driving out the foreign countries are driving out our own production, which is a national security issue. Um, the consumers are paying more, which is an economic issue. It's not even about inflation. This is flat out they're paying more. And so anyhow, so we've gone to Congress. Congress is looking at whether they're going to do an investigation, and an unlikely person, Senator Cory Booker, his office is willing to put out that investigation request.
I was going to say, and in our community, most of the time, whenever you say Cory Booker, people would be like, and
Right.
and even in the cattle industry, because
He's a vegan.
he is a known vegan,
Right.
but he is very involved in this conversation,
Right.
and all of those things.
But we're also going to, and where the conversation with the White House came about is USDA has done this without any rulemaking. And so as much as they've created, as easy as it was for them to create it by a policy guidance, they can undo it by a White House executive order. And so we're running this rabbit in two different paths.
So, okay. And so again, what I'm going to take away from it is that, going back to Boston, that one of the things I learned was that we threw over this tea and it was, this big disruption and all that. But quite honestly, a lot of the tea had been sitting in the port for so long that it was bad anyway. It was spoiled anyway. And like they were like having to scrape it out because it had gone bad. So I'm going to kind of circle all of this back around a little bit to say that you going to DC to make this argument about the beef kind of goes also back to kind of some of the things I learned in Boston. And again, y'all, our viewers probably know more than I do, But you've often said that as a country, we haven't starved.
Mhm.
And so therefore we don't know. But in Boston, there was a statue in honor of the potato famine people. And understanding how all of this kind of comes full circle in the sense that we've got to all have access to affordable, safe, wholesome foods, but we also have an obligation to make sure that if the world goes crazy, we can feed ourselves.
Right. And that's the problem. And so we have invested the money in the infrastructure of a safe, affordable, wholesome food system,
Okay?
but we're dismantling it. The foreign national countries are dismantling it in various different segments, but it's being dismantled. You go down the road and a farmer goes out of business, that infrastructure is no longer there. When we figured out, crap, we screwed up, we have to put this back in place. It's going to cost us way more money to do it today than it did 100 years ago. So we want to make sure we protect our infrastructure, protect our farming, protect our ranchers, protect that infrastructure because we don't have that kind of money to put this all back together.
So we're talking about you don't have to go to every fight you're invited to, but it sounds to me like you have you're fighting a lot in DC right
We
now.
are. And the funny part about it is Truman had said, I never give them hell. I just tell the truth and they think it's hell. And that's where we're at right now is there's a lot of uncomfortable people in the USDA that are not liking what we're saying, and a lot of people in Congress too, because a lot of their campaign money is coming back from these four companies. So there's a lot of people that's uncomfortable. We're going to find a pathway that wins, and so we're just taking those different directions right now.
And I can agree with that. And the only thing I'll say is this isn't about you winning the argument. This is not about a right or a left or a Republican or a Democrat or an elephant or a donkey or any of that other stuff.
Mm.
This is simply about protecting the people who put beef and meat and food on our tables. And I am the first to admit that I don't understand all of this, but I am thankful for you
Mm.
and those people who go to DC and have these conversations and advocate for our future.
You're welcome. And while I was in DC, you had a meeting of your own back home with the CEO of ECU Healthcare.
I did. I got this letter, which it was invitation only, and it was a meeting, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But I want to say deep respect, deep respect for the CEO, and he made it pretty clear that like he is the largest employer of the healthcare systems in our community who came to Tarboro
Mhm.
to have a meeting to hear about our community and our concerns and what was happening. And he said to us, he was like, I could totally be at home right now. I could be drinking a drink and having dinner with my wife, but I really care about my job and I want to hear from you. And I found that very enlightening and encouraging.
Now there was a statistic that you gave me, and I still ain't wrapped my head around it. It had to deal with children delivery. Like we see a lot of babies in our county,
Right.
but there was a statistic that was like, wait, what?
So we were talking with ECU Health,
Right.
Vidant Health, Greenville. It's a network of hospitals, right?
Right.
And one of the concerns or the conversations was, okay, everybody in our community, okay, like if I get to the hospital and I get to our small local hospital, I say, or get me to Greenville. So what makes Greenville better other than it's a bigger city
Mhm.
and whatever? And he was, trying to explain is Greenville better? But we were talking about labor or child care, right? Like labor and delivery. And he said, on average, at the Tarboro Hospital, there is one baby born per day at the Tarboro Hospital.
Didn't have a clue.
Okay, and why that matters to us, or what that means, is you've got to have a nursing staff, a doctor, facilities for not just a normal birth, but a high risk, high concerning birth,
Right.
on staff all the time for one baby on average a day. But that doesn't always happen as one baby today, one baby tomorrow, one baby the next day.
Right.
It could be all three of those babies are born right now within the hour, and then we go 3 days without a birth. And that was what he was explaining, was the stress of trying to staff and prepare for that level of healthcare.
And when you don't have the population to support the cost of the doctor and all of those nursing staff and the technology that comes along, today's technology, I get the problem why we're going broke in our healthcare system.
When he said that, it made so much sense.
Right. I mean, we sit there and fuss. I mean, we joke it, but it's not a joke. We don't do healthcare in our community. We go to Raleigh.
Right.
But they have more population in Raleigh that they can afford all of that.
Right. And it's almost, it's broken down. That expense is shared over more people because that nurse serves more people. And so therefore of how it works. But this, he brought up a really good point too, because he talked about in the western part of the state, near Asheville, it's called Mission Health, which is another health organization, and we're familiar with them because our daughter went to Brevard. But they started sending all of their labor and delivery patients to one hospital, which, okay, that might sound beneficial. Okay, like let's take one and make it the hub, if you will, for labor and delivery or whatever, and like really give you quality or all the resources. But the problem is that in our community, that would affect mortality rates for Black and brown babies, for moms, and because that's historically our population.
Right. You have the whole issue of transportation. How they going to get there? Can they afford to get there?
Absolutely. And so this CEO, again, like I did not go into this meeting with any kind of understanding or support for him. And I really kind of, honestly, in a lot of our backdoor conversations, bash our our health system, if you will. But I listened to him and I thought, what a problem. Like, what a challenge that he is literally dealing with life and death situations. And we're only talking about one area of healthcare, and that is, labor and delivery, OBGYN, that area, and the cost associated it versus the human reward. And now what does that look like?
Well, and then now he's saying that. And what was interesting, when our daughter was born out in Nebraska, we had to drive halfway across the damn state to have her delivered.
Well, we chose to.
Well,
they
didn't have
didn't have an anesthesiologist, on staff, and so I chose that having our first kid, that if I went into labor on my own, I wanted an anesthesiologist readily available. But again, that was 26 years ago.
Right, and we still have the same problem today.
Right, exactly.
But it all, like I said, like, think about the cardiologists, think about like all this stuff. And then, so we talk about affordable healthcare in America and affordable healthcare in rural communities, but healthcare and health access is not the same meaning, and you can't actually give us the access due to the fact of the cost of the lower population.
Right. And that
Oh,
it is so, like I said, I mean, the people who are working in rural healthcare right now are heroes.
mhm.
I mean, hands down heroes, because they they could make more money by driving an hour or 45 minutes even to some of our bigger areas and getting that, while this CEO is literally fighting to try to figure out just how to keep our doors open, because he understands that not only are we an economic driver as far as
Employment.
employment, exactly, but like life and death mortality rates depend on accessibility to a hospital or healthcare situation. And so, like I said, I we just said you don't have to go to every argument you're invited to. And I got invited to this meeting with not a clear understanding of what I was supposed to contribute. But I walked away from that with a new appreciation for the decisions that are being made at that level for the benefit of our community.
So, and then you bring in, so like, okay, so we don't necessarily have to have a doctor on staff. We could do telehealth, but then telehealth issues in rural community creates a problem in the sense that we don't have access to high-speed internet. We don't have the education on how to run this technology with the normal, the population. So the telehealth is not a solution at this time. Like we have a lot to do in education before we get to being able to use that.
Right.
And that would cut cost.
Well, and the problem with telehealth too is you're assuming that those people are seeing a doctor who's going to do a more thorough health assessment, and that telehealth is more triage kind of
Right.
situation. But again, not that
It's not happening.
that's not necessarily the case. That's not happening. And so now, I mean, you've got to have that person who builds that connectivity, who builds that relationship. And again, that was one of the things that the CEO talked about, was the fact that he going back to the OBGYN scenario, is that in another hospital in the network, there is a doctor who wants to retire, and very much wants to retire, but and he knows that he needs to hire somebody to replace this doctor.
Mhm.
Well, the problem is you get all these applicants who come, and this CEO is very aware of the fact that if you're coming from Charlotte or Raleigh or Chicago, or I don't know, anywhere else, even internationally, and we're going to put you in a Husky, North Carolina, or we're going to put you in Tarboro, North Carolina, that takes a special kind of person who can kind of live here and be happy. And you don't want to hire somebody, train them, they stay for 3 to 5 years, and then they leave.
Right.
And so where I get frustrated is I go to a doctor, and then my doctor leaves, and my doctor is, oh, and here's this new evolving door of doctors, and there's no continuity. But this CEO sees that, understands that, and is trying to balance. Okay, we got to have, and I guess what I'll say to that is, and I'm going back to Tarboro, going back to Husky, I'm going back to all of the areas that are in that network, is he wants a Husky to be successful. He wants that community to thrive so that he can send qualified doctors who can build a family. He wants an education system and a school system that is there because that helps healthcare, which helps his job, which helps. So again,
When the heartbeat of the rural healthcare slows, the whole community feels it.
absolutely, absolutely, and we are at a risk for losing healthcare. Martin County
Health access.
but healthcare because health access too. But Martin County, and that's a whole different thing for everybody who's listening, which is not part of the network, but is part of the conversation. And so again, going back to what we're saying, you don't have to chase every argument, but you need to be willing to stand for the changes that are going to keep people healthy and our communities alive. And I hope we're doing that. So my favorite part, that front porch where we just sit back and like talk about the heart piece of everything. And I keep just coming back to gratitude and like thankful that who I was and the opinions that I held true to 2 weeks ago when we sat and did this podcast are not 100% the same opinions that I hold now because I have had different experiences and conversations and interactions that have expanded my way of thinking. And I'm very thankful for that.
We talk about it in the sense of in our family is if you go to things that make you comfortable, then you don't learn and you don't grow. And we have made a reflection at one point in time this week, back in when her daughter was in middle school, the whole Sudan Lost Boys uh, thing was going on, George Clooney and blah blah blah, and there was a lost boy that was going to speak at ECU, and my middle school daughter or your middle school daughter, I guess that would be mine at that point in time, wanted to go, and I've never heard of this situation and what was happening. But I took her, and she was the youngest person in a college setting, and it was all about rallying, and but I learned by getting out of my normal conversations and let's go over here and let's see what they're talking about over there, and go there, pick a battle or have a battle or pick a fight. Let me just see what you all are talking about over here.
Right. And like if we are on social media, probably more than we should be, but we like social media. But I don't necessarily feel compelled to always share my view or my opinion of something as absolute
Right.
on social media. But I do enjoy listening and reading and gaining from. But one of the things that is interesting in our jobs, if you will, or our careers, is that a lot of the times the things that our community is like locked at each other about, and like trying to solve, and like they're going at each other on social media. We are blessed to be invited into some of those meetings to address those issues, and the leaders at the absolute top don't look at all as at each other as what it looks like on
Right.
social media. Like we're kind of the soldiers, the foot soldiers and the mouthpieces. But if you really elevate it out, there's a lot more respectful conversations. The differences are still there,
Right.
but you were having it at a completely different level.
Some of this is theater.
Okay.
Some of it is theater, and because we've created a system in our government and our leaders, it's all about they got to raise money, and so how do I raise money? I got to jazz up my base and get them to pour money in for me to fight. For example, Senator Cory Booker. I mean, I'm just telling you, my body shivers when I say the name, but his staff has been completely great to work with, engaging, thoughtfulness, and said, "Hey, we're going to take up this fight for you." And like not my leader, right? I'm
Right.
having an issue with that.
Right.
But somebody who doesn't, who's not I'm not his constituent, but yet sees the value. But yet you can't put him in the room with a bunch of Republicans or they're going to kill one another. And so but you see him walking down the hall, you see them eating dinners at times. I don't know. I wish we could take the theater, the drama out of life so that we can get down to the basics.
Right. Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I mean, this part of our podcast, the front porch, sitting there, having that conversation, that's the root of who we are. And if more people would just take a breath, and understand that there are good intentions behind everybody. And again, one of my conversations was, well, somebody shared the thing. Well, I don't just watch Fox News to make my decision. I also watch CNN and I watch MSNBC
Mm,
so that I can get a neutral opinion about things. And
that's
as
not accurate.
exactly, as people who are in those conversations, that's not neutral at all
Right.
because there are so many factors that go into what is said and what's presented and all of that. And so I wish sometimes, and I know why we don't, but like I was in a meeting Monday and somebody who should by community standards not have a lot in common with me sat down beside me and was like, I'm going to sit beside my friend today, and we had the greatest time. Hugs my neck. I think deep respect for what they are doing. We are working in very opposite areas of our community but with the same goal.
Hmm.
And I genuinely pray for him, pray for them, that organization. And I feel like the same thing is happening. And I just wish like our community could see that. I wish they could see that, in all of this, while we're spewing stuff like whatever, that like it's really just words, and the measure of strength isn't how loud we get, it's how wisely we choose when and where to
Right.
use our voice.
Right. I mean, amen. 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 And we keep talking about meetings and stuff, and it's just there's a lot of conversations that are happening because there's a lot of problems, and we've gotten to the point now. Some of these problems are we have to solve them. Like we're dealing with the rate of farmland being lost in Edgecombe County, and so we're needing to like everybody needs to stop and like we need to put in some barriers here, so that we get the right companies to come in. We're not opposed to growth, but let's have smart growth. And so, and I mean, even in a situation the other night where I had a difference of opinions on setbacks, but there was, and then afterwards, during breakfast yesterday with the person I had this difference of opinion, he said, he said, I see where you're coming from, and I respect what he wanted smaller setbacks. I want larger setbacks. Why? Because I want somebody to be in the right place at the right time, not just do something.
Right.
And so, but anyhow, yeah, it's
And like I said, I think the summary of it for us is, you know, you don't have to be the loudest voice. And quite honestly, the loudest voice is not always the smartest voice. And it's also not necessarily the voice of the majority.
mhm,
And if you will just sit back and listen and take a breath and be willing to learn as much as you hope other people are learning from
mhm.
you, then maybe, just maybe, like we can impact.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Rural Roots and Cowboy Boots.
We've covered a lot of ground today. Boston renegades, DC policy battles, rural health care, and why sometimes the best response is simply not to respond.
At the end of the day, it's also about choosing wisely where we spend our energy and being grateful for the rooms and tables we're invited to.
Thanks for pulling up a chair with us. We're glad you're part of this conversation.
And then until next time,
Marriage, mayhem, and manure.
Cowboy boots, laughter and love, where the dirt runs deep. The door may fly, but the bond won't break. Welcome to the good life, it's ours to keep.